Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 21 Hats podcast. I'm your host, Loren Feldman. This week, Sean Bussey, Liz Piccarazzi, and Jackie Russo talk about how the marketing world is turning upside down. For decades, business owners have treated search engine optimization as something of a religion. They may not have been able to explain it, but they had faith that if they obeyed the rules, Google would discover their sites and rank them. But search engines are getting a lot less generous about sharing links. And Sean fears there's an apocalypse coming for businesses that rely too heavily on SEO. Jackie is a little more optimistic. There'll be other places to go get free traffic, she says. There always are. Plus, Liz gives us an update on her recent trip to Vietnam in search of a contract manufacturer. And in a case study ripped right from the subreddit headlines, I ask the three owners, what do you do if a loyal, hardworking employee starts a side hustle selling a product that doesn't compete with your product, but looks a whole lot like it? Even in good times, owning and running a business can be a lonely pursuit. Our hope is that these weekly conversations will let owners know they are not alone in facing challenges. Same thing with our daily newsletter, the 21 Hats Morning Report, which Inc. magazine named the best newsletter for business owners and which you can subscribe to for free at 21hats.com, where you can also find transcripts of our podcast episodes and lots of other articles and interviews. Joining me this week on the podcast are regulars Sean Bussey, CEO of Kinesis, which is based in Portland, Oregon, and works with small businesses on marketing, culture, and strategy. Liz Piccarazzi, CEO of CityBin, which is based in Brooklyn, New York, and makes trash enclosures and package bins. And Jackie Russo, CEO of Brand Russo, a marketing agency based in Lafayette, Louisiana. The episode is titled, What Will Businesses Do If SEO Dies? Before we get started, I want to play a part of an interview I did with Steve Baker, who is a vice president with our sponsor, The Great Game of Business. I talked to Steve about what The Great Game does and what he's hearing out there as he works with businesses around the country. So Steve, listeners to this podcast are well aware of The Great Game of Business, and if they know anything about it, they know that you guys encourage companies to practice what is known as open book management. Can you just give us a real quick primer on how you guys view that, what open book management is?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, I'm glad you brought it up because it's a huge misnomer for us. Open book management, that's like what we're known for. We're the open book people. And Jack Stack, Inc. magazine in 2009 called him the father of open book management. I'm just going to put it out there. If Jack were on the podcast with us now, he would say, I don't really like that term that much. Because see, what happens, Loren, is people hear it and they assume that if they open their financials, someone's going to magically care, like they're going to somehow be interested or even understand it. And so let's go back in history a little bit. I mentioned before that Jack has used this analogy of a game for 40 years. In reality, he didn't even name it Great Game of Business in the beginning. It was just this analogy of a game and those principles that I laid out. Know and teach the rules, follow the action and keep score, and provide a stake in the outcome, all encircling a team goal. Well, as they got more and more coverage at SRC through the 80s and into the 90s, when the book finally came out, I believe it was Lucian Rhodes at Inc. magazine that helped to coin that term. John Case, another Inc. writer at the time who wrote Open Book Management, The Coming Revolution. A lot of that was about SRC. He actually coined the term Open Book Management. And then Bo Burlingham from Inc. Co-wrote the original book with Jack, and is still a very dear friend and close partner of the game. What I'm trying to say is that I love all that collaboration, but through the years, when you simplify something down and it gets hung with a marketing moniker, sometimes it doesn't describe it the best way possible. I was just on the plane back from Anchorage last night, and somebody next to me, what do you do? And I was so tempted to say, well, I'm the open book management guy. But instead, I decided to kind of peel it back just a little bit and say, well, what's keeping you up at night? And this particular person went on to tell me about, everybody wants to work from home. They want unlimited vacation, bemoaning kind of the next gen workers. And I said, what would happen if you could align everyone to a common goal and get them talking about things in a different way and actually believe that they could move the number you worry about most. And for him, it was talent and cash. I'm just going to be honest. And he was just absolutely blown away that someone could do it. I'm afraid if I would have started with open book management, that he would have shut down, put on his Bose noise canceling earphones and left me alone. But the key is I stopped for a second and listened and said, what is your biggest problem? Rather than leading with, we want you to open your financials and go open kimono with all of your people. That isn't the point. It's let's teach them some of the things you know. And over time, we'll give them more and more, not only exposure and education. It's not just about transparency, because that's worthless without education, right? But also more responsibility and accountability. Hey, if this is your number, tell me how you can actually move it. And then we'll give you a piece of the action. We'll give you some skin in the game.
So you're saying you do open the books. That's true. It's just that there's a lot more to it than that.
Yeah, I think that it's the simplification of it to open book management that really rallies people who know us, but repels people who don't. You can read a text version of my entire interview with Steve at 21hats.com. And now, on to today's show. Welcome, Sean, Liz, and Jackie. It's great to have you here. I want to start today by talking about SEO, search engine optimization. And I want to do that for two reasons. First, because business owners have kind of been told that SEO is pretty much the most important thing in the world. And second, because I'm picking up signals that something big is happening here. Things are changing. I've even seen suggestions that SEO may be dying, perhaps because of the rise of artificial intelligence. If true, that would be a big deal for a lot of business owners who have spent a lot of time and money optimizing their sites. Many, I suspect, without necessarily having a clear understanding of whether SEO actually does what it's supposed to do. You guys are all kind of on the front lines of this. Jackie and Sean as marketing experts. Liz is a business owner with an e-commerce website. And I'm wondering if any of you have started thinking about this.
Well, so I'll jump in, Lauren, and I'll say I haven't thought about it a lot, but I know that I also have a little bit of a stubborn stance on it. I don't like AI-generated web content. I can see it from a mile away. Me personally, for my own brand, my company's brand, I believe in real writing that has texture and has nuance and has creativity. I work very hard on every word that we have in marketing, whether it be something at a trade show to something that we have on the website. But I'm going to be writing it from the perspective of, is this reflective of my brand and my product? I never really consider, is this good for SEO? I know that I probably should be doing it, but I don't like that type of writing, period. And therefore, we haven't done it.
Are you engaged in an SEO strategy at all, Liz? Or is it just, you believe in sort of content marketing and are using that as I don't know, maybe it's a sales enablement tool, maybe something else?
So, we use things like, Moz, Ahrefs, some of those reporting to see for the keywords that are important for our product, where we're ranking. So we do look at that regularly. We do have a blog writer who writes in SEO friendly ways. I think a lot of that is also trying to make sure the keyword terms are in the writing. So far, those have kind of been my steps. And, we do really well in SEO ranking for our category. Often the only kind of companies above us are Home Depot and Amazon, which means in terms of an independent brand, we're doing really well up there. But that's as far as we've gone. And I know that's not like having an outside person, but it's just taking what I've learned about SEO to see what can we do there. But I would never, I guess what I was saying before is I would never use a tool to do the majority of my writing. I would use a human being and then maybe scrub it from the back end for, okay, could we change this word trash enclosure to trash bin, knowing that that's a frequently searched term. So I would say it's very, sort of surgical, very tactical, and it's not like a holistic strategy.
Before we go any further, could either Sean or Jackie offer up a quick definition of what search engine optimization is?
I'll jump in.
Please.
So search engine optimization is going through a series of points on a Google supplied checklist that the other platforms, Yahoo, Bing, etc., have kind of followed or modeled that allows you to be a good match when a person asks a question of the platform. So I go to Google and say, I need to find a brand identity company. A company is going to give me a new logo. Now, notice two different versions of the same thing, brand identity, logo. And so Google will say, oh, this company is a good match. And it will supply a list of companies that it feels are a good match based on those specific words I used in my question. And the challenge is, much to the point that we're discussing right now, you've got two different audiences then. You've got the audience of the humans who are doing the searching, and you've got the audience of the platform that's answering the question, and they do not use the same criteria in what they need.
So you have to pick one or the other?
Both. You have to do things for both.
I have to admit my own bias as a journalist has been that having great content is more important than having great SEO. And kind of what Liz was saying before, I believe that if you stuff your content full of keywords, it can't be great content. Of course, that's what I want to believe. Am I wrong about that? Is Liz wrong about it? What do you guys think, Sean and Jackie?
I mean, I have a lot to say here. I'm trying to kind of sit on my hands for a minute. You know, we have a really extensive history in SEO. We were probably some of the first to market in it in terms of our strategy back in the early 2000s was what was at that time called article marketing. And so what you would do is you would write an article about something important and valuable to a customer, and then the search engines would pick it up and eventually point customers your way. And, you know, just sort of as a credibility piece, we were first page of Google for highly competitive keywords for many years. Terms like brand design, logo design, website design, marketing, Portland, you know, like really very, what are today exceptionally competitive words. We were on page one, often in the top spot. And what I've observed with, even prior to AI, is that the industry's matured. And in the early days of most technology, the technology is super advantageous to the user. So in effect, we were getting customers for free. And I mean, you know, we had to put energy into writing content. And at the time, there was a lot of these like stuffing words and even like using white text on white background. I don't know if you all remember that.
Yeah, I do.
And so it's kind of been this arms race, right? You have the search providers, Google, Bing, et cetera, and then the SEO people, whether those are consultants or individual businesses, you know, doing the hard work and trying to figure out the game. And what I observed, you know, sometime in the, teens, was that slowly but surely the search providers, especially Google, were pushing away from organic content, from actually really valuable content towards monetized content. And so you started to see like sponsored content. And you remember when it was in blue? Remember that? Like it was like highlighted as like the set aside thing as paid. Like they made it really clear what was paid and what wasn't paid. And then over time, they've made it less and less clear what's paid and what's not paid. And today, I would argue that a Google search is actually quite terrible. That the results it provides, you have to work really, really hard to find something good because it's been either overwhelmed by paid, which is their incentive, or it's been, it's the folks who game the system, you know, kind of to your points, everybody here, folks who are putting quantity over quality. And there are always exceptions to this. You know, I think Google does in some cases try to put good content forward, but to my other point, I think it's an arms race. And two things happened, especially recently, that I think are really important for people to pay attention to. One is AI is going to turn everybody and their brother into a quote unquote SEO person. You know, so I think you're right to observe, Liz, that the content is garbage a lot, but it doesn't mean that people won't use it. It's sort of like when stock photography came onto the scene. I would be like, God, this is terrible. A real photographer is what we want here. But stock photography is one. It has ultimately dominated everything. Cheaper and worse. So I think we're going to see content become progressively worse, progressively cheaper to produce.
Sean, could I stop you for a second?
Yeah.
I'm not sure I understand what you meant when you said that AI is going to turn everybody into an SEO person.
It's going to both dumb down and democratize SEO. So you can do things like, hey, ChatGPT, what's a strategy for keywords to optimize for my business, which is XYZ? And it will not only give you the content, I think it will also give you a quote unquote strategy. But if everybody has access to the same thing, it's going to really change the landscape, I think, for the worse. And I worry for the small business owners who aren't aware of these really seismic changes that are coming, that have already been coming for actually quite a while, and that are going to accelerate as a result of AI. You can now write content. You're not going to need a writer to write a blog post. And I know it grosses me and Liz out for sure. We all value thoughtful information, but it doesn't mean that, folks will not default to that. So you're going to have folks, pumping out content that's mediocre and maybe even get better, but then it'll all be a lot of me too. So I think just to kind of put a bow on this, then the trajectory will be, how do you break through all that noise as a business? And I think it's going to be pay to play. I think it's going to be, you're going to have to pay to get access to customers. That's my theory.
Paying the search engines?
Paying the search engine. That's their goal, right? If you think about it, their goal is to control the buyers and the sellers. They want to become what Amazon has effectively done, right? Amazon has effectively controlled the buyers and the sellers within their ecosystem. Google wants to do the same thing. And so my other piece, aside from AI, was the recent Google event where they actually came out and said it. They said, we want you to make Google your choice for making decisions. We want Google to make it easy for you to make a decision. So the future, not only is there an AI arms race in terms of content creation, what Google is want to do is they want to become the intermediary between you, the buyer, and service providers. So instead of it pointing you to multiple web pages, it's going to just give you the answer. It's just going to say, oh, well, the best restaurant in Portland is XYZ. They're not going to point you to a website that has that choice. Does that make sense to you guys?
Jackie, are you seeing similar things?
Oh, absolutely. I think Sean's spot on. And that's the part that really becomes a challenge, because can we really trust Google to know what's best for us? Do we not want to have some ability to go look at different websites, get a feel for the vibe, do some research, make a decision? It's like the people who go to a restaurant and just say, bring food, and whatever the chef wants you to eat, that's what you eat. That's not how we are.
Yeah. Yeah. I listen to a number of tech podcasts. One of my favorites is Kara Swisher. She's been doing this forever. She is such a credible journalist in the tech sector. And when she came out and said SEO is dead, I was like, whoa. I kind of thought that, but to hear somebody of her credentials say that, and it makes complete sense. Google absolutely wants to own the rails. And I think what small business owners need to start acting on now, especially if they have an SEO strategy, they need to start building other ways to get to customers. This is something that I really admire about you, Liz. I think you've done two things really well. One, you've said, hey, we're not going to be single channel in how we get to customers. So you do PR really well. I've noticed that. I think you do a really good job on social. And then I also think that you pivoting to the government and public sector, you've said, let's go find new customers. So you're constantly looking for new channels. And I don't mean to put words in your mouth, but I think that lesson is what owners right now need to start working on, because 2 years from now, it's going to be an apocalypse. It will be an absolute apocalypse. How's that for positive?
That's nice. No, that makes me feel really good because sometimes the things that we work on seem sort of disparate. But when someone like you from the outside identifies and validates the thing that I have been working really hard on, I have to say it's very validating. But like what I'm coming out of this conversation is the idea that, oh my God, there's something wrong. I need to come up with my AI strategy by Friday at 6 p.m. Like I need to quell that sort of worry. But I do agree that I'm going to need to adopt parts of it and, learn more about it. I'm 51. I don't know if that's too old to learn more about AI, but I've been very closed-minded about it. And maybe what I should do is look at it sort of it's going to be a little bit of a learning curve, but maybe I can have like a hybrid where like 75% of my content is real and organic from our voice and 25% is placed in there.
I'm saying to owners out there who do marketing, you've got to have more than just one strategy. And in fact, I would start to reduce my reliance on SEO unless you want to be in the pay-to-play business, which, Liz, you have a lot of experience in pay-to-play, right? I mean, you come from the advertising world. You do a lot of advertising for your clients. What's your take on that? Jackie, sorry. Jackie, like that's your perspective. That's your world. I'm curious what you think about that.
Well, I think everything's got an ROI. And so you've got to examine where are you going to get the return on the investment of whatever the resource might be, time, money, frustration. Mm-hmm. And so I think that there's always a way. There's always a way through. And so as the system changes, we're going to adapt new systems and those are going to work. In some ways, Google works for us, but in other ways, it's not working for us. It's working for itself. It's a for-profit entity. And so we've got to find a way to work the system in our favor. I saw a lot of people abandon their websites and go all in on social media until they realized that Meta wasn't really altruistic and for them. And all of a sudden it was like, wait, you're going to restrict my content? Wait, you're going to just shut down my page without warning? Wait, you're not going to protect me from hackers and I can lose my page for months at a time or maybe forever? Oh, well, let me go back to my website and my database and something I can actually control.
Right. Yeah, that's such a good point. I remember that. It's like an era, right? There was an era where especially small businesses were like, this is fantastic. I've got this Facebook page. I might pay for some ads. I can get low cost leads. Like to your ROI point, it was a great deal until it was a terrible deal.
Yeah.
And I guess that's where I'm coming to this from is like the sands are shifting in a really big way.
Yeah.
And to recognize that change is coming hard is really important. That's, if I can leave people with one message, it's that. The days of free traffic, I think they're coming to an end really fast.
For that resource right now, but there'll be some other place to go get free traffic. There always is. The thing about marketing is it's going to continue to evolve and change. And so the trick to me, the only real trick, is to never think you can set it and forget it. You've got to be willing to adapt and change as it adapts and changes.
Yeah, I think that's such a good message because I think a lot of folks have been conditioned. You need a digital strategy, you need SEO, you need a blog, that's an old playbook. Like, I think, Liz, like you're really internally innovative and that kind of constant iteration of marketing and placement and product really serves you well. I don't know that a lot of businesses operate that way. I don't see that. I don't see that a lot in the small business space.
I want to step back for a second and make sure that we're connecting the dots here. The theory, if in fact SEO is dying, is that ChatGPT and other AI platforms, not all of them, by the way, but many of them are just giving answers. They're not giving links. So you ask a question, you get the answer, and they kind of cut out the middleman. They don't show their work. They don't show you where they've gotten the information from. And that's going to hurt those people who provided that information and lived off those connections, for the past however many years.
20 years. Yeah.
If that's the theory, what is that telling business owners right now? What should they be thinking about? And I guess before I ask you that, I would just say it's intriguing to me that it sounds like Liz has put herself in a really great spot because she never believed in SEO. Its demise is not a problem for her.
Well, she hasn't built her entire kingdom on one pillar of SEO. It sounds like you're doing some of it, Liz, right?
Yep. Very surgical.
Yes, I think you've outlined the theory of the case, Lauren. And, there's a question, sometimes people will say, well, why would Google bite the hand that feeds them? Google needs content, right? It's absolutely harvesting it everywhere. Why would it decimate the content production world? My point is they've already done it once. They did it to journalism. They eviscerated journalism. They don't care. They don't really care. They are rapacious information thieves. And so if journalism is, won't give it to them or they're out of business, doesn't matter. They'll go somewhere else, so it's fundamentally, they want to own the rails. If you look at Amazon, Amazon is the future of what SEO will become, right? If you look at these poor businesses selling on Amazon, they get on there and at first it's amazing. And then pretty soon they're being not only ripped off by cheap, Chinese knockoffs, then they're being ripped off by Amazon itself. Amazon is producing the same product as that small business. Okay, so that framework, you apply that to Google, right? Google is now going to basically say, we have the information. And by the way, business owner, if you want to have the customer who does that search, if you want to be the business we recommend, pay us money. And the people who will be able to pay the money are corporations, which is, you already see it. This is back to my point. Google searches today are crap compared to what they were 10 years ago. And they will continue to get, quote unquote, worse in terms of really good, gems of information. And it will become commoditized. And so that's why I'm raising my hand and saying, red flag here, for those of you who are using that as their only strategy, you need more. You need more. And I think Liz is a really good case of that. And I think Jackie's message of ROI, new things will arise. And that's true. New things will arise and you have to be looking for them or generating them yourself.
Yeah, I would say one more thing on this is that there's some channels that I use that I'm going to really dial up. So I do a lot of PR, maybe I'll do a little even more PR. Maybe I'll be even more strategic about planning my PR, or trade shows that's face to face. That is such a great way to win more business, to interact with our existing customers. So for me, those sorts of human to human interactions are probably what I'm going to lean into even more. And I will need to adapt a bit with AI, but I have zero interest in doing that. And I'm incredibly resentful about it, to be perfectly honest. I resent AI. That is my statement.
Jackie, is it possible that new source that you're referring to might in fact be ChatGPT and similar platforms? And 2 years from now, we may be talking about, instead of an SEO strategy, a ChatGPT strategy, how you get people to discover you there?
Oh, I don't think it's 2 years from now. I think it's 2 months from now.
Okay.
And I don't want to anger Liz because I like her a lot and I want her to like me. But I think that in a lot of ways, we almost have to look at AI as we looked at the coming of the internet or the introduction of the computer. It's going to be everywhere. And so we can hate it, but how do we harness its power and use it while we hate it? Because it's intrinsically interwoven now into everything. And there's no getting out of it.
You mentioned journalism a couple of times, Sean, and in some ways, clearly journalism has been decimated by social media and by search engines and, the internet in general. But those who've survived, I think, are in some ways a little bit ahead of the curve now. And, we've lived through Craigslist, which took away classified ads. We lived through Facebook, which was a conduit of content until they decided to turn off their news feed. And now this is coming, but the adaptation has been that every publication that still exists now has 134 newsletters and their email newsletters, and their effort is to reach readers directly and not rely on the help of people who they thought might have been their friends back in the day when they were more naive about where the internet was going. I wonder, is that direct contact the direction that business owners should be thinking?
I really like owning a customer relationship versus renting a customer relationship. And so when people were flocking to Facebook, if they didn't use the right strategy, they were effectively renting the customer relationship. And some folks the smart ones figured out, I'm going to get in front of people using Facebook for what it is. And then I'm going to build the relationship where I own that relationship. And I think that's the difference there, in that description. And I think things like, it is interesting to see email newsletters kind of have a resurgence. I think that's a reflection of a growing skepticism of these tech platforms and what their objectives are versus what a business's objectives are. And I think the mistake that a lot of folks made in thinking that they were there for us, that they were here to help us. It's just not the case. And I guess what I'm saying to the SEO folks is the tide is coming. It's a wave, and it's going to be accelerated by AI. And buckle up. Build other ways now, and if you don't know how to build them, hire Jackie, or call somebody, leaning on your SEO agency to optimize and optimize and optimize. I think that playbook is going to run out. And unfortunately, a lot of the shops that consult on this stuff, they're like hammers and there's one nail, they're hitting over and over and over again. And what I'm arguing is that you actually need a diversity of strategy. And now's the time to start that for sure.
Well, I want to move on to another topic. But before we go, I just want you to know that I asked ChatGPT if SEO is dead, and it said no. So we could be wrong about all this.
Oh, well, clearly.
Liz, we've talked here a good bit about your manufacturing challenge. You make your trash enclosures in China, where they've been subject to tariffs that both Joe Biden and Donald Trump are promising to increase dramatically. That's why you recently went to Vietnam to check out a factory there. How'd your trip go?
So I think the trip went really well. It was organized by our contract manufacturer that we work with in China. So back in, I think it was 2018, they set up shop in Vietnam after the Trump tariffs hit. And over the years, they've, said here and there, might you want to consider Vietnam? But we didn't really have any reason to do that until now. So they bid out our work to various factories to then have samples made, which then were made, and that's what we are going over to see. So we had samples made for 2 of our products. They're using the same drawings as are used in China. So that's kind of a benefit of using an intermediary like that, because they share all of the documents. And basically it was a replication process. So what I would say is that they replicated it very well. There were only a couple of tweaks that I would make to the way that they fabricated it. But the only concern I had there was that I can tell, in their hands of the people working in the factory, they don't have my product in their hands. They don't have it in their fingers how to put it together. And so for me, it was a little bit of a watch out when it came time to test the product while fully assembled. I could see there wasn't a familiarity with it that I've grown accustomed to. So my factory in China, I've been with them for 7 years. They know every screw, every weld mark, they know everything. So for me, that was something where I raised it. I know it's going to take some time if we do move things over to familiarize yourself. But that was for me something that I kind of knew I wouldn't like if I saw it. And I have to admit, I was sort of looking for it. But I was looking for more familiarity with the modularity of my product. And, that was the watch out.
Was that the same thing you observed when you first started in China?
I know there was a learning curve, but because it was my first entree into it, I didn't really look at it around the familiarity because it didn't seem really applicable. like they were kind of a fresh start. So yeah, I would say that was the one concern, is that I want for them to understand that these aren't just samples. This is one of like 12 different products that all, in terms of functionality are very similar and they fit together, but that sort of we're a suite of products that work together. It's definitely addressable, and I did ask for them to address it. And maybe it was a little bit like it was sort of set up as, Liz and Frank come to see the samples of this one, or actually two products. And there wasn't the feeling of we're coming over there to decide whether we work with this factory, period. I would have liked to have seen more of that understanding to make that real sort of decision. Is this the factory for us? If the question was, did they do a great job on the samples? That would be yes. So I don't know if that makes sense.
Do you think the manufacturer's rep just kind of set up the wrong expectation, or some other communication breakdown? What's your thought on that?
I honestly think that there's a step that needs to happen where we do almost like a Zoom, where I take the factory through our product line and how it works together to get at that high level, that the opportunity for this factory is not just to replicate the one thing that we asked them to replicate. The opportunity is to take over the whole line. And let's make sure you understand what's coming down the pike. So yes, I don't think that my manufacturer's rep did anything wrong, but I would say if I were to do this again, I would make absolute sure that that kind of foundational understanding was there with the factory.
And are you asking them to do this work for free?
The samples?
Yeah, the samples, or do you pay them for that?
We pay them for the samples. Yep.
Liz, you've talked in the past about trying to develop a China plus one strategy, but you just referred to the possibility that you might move all of your manufacturing to Vietnam. How are you thinking about that?
I would actually say that all to Vietnam is not a great possibility, even though I made it sound that way. I mean more like if I wanted to move it all over, would I feel comfortable moving it over? And the answer to that right now is no. If through doing some productions of multiple products, I decide it makes sense to bring it all over, I would. But there's a way still more questions than there are answers. I can go into what some of those are separately, but I'm looking at it from a hybrid. So which products would make sense in which place? And, my US search is on again. So that is something that I really want to try again. It will be my third attempt to work back in the US. I actually posted an article on LinkedIn on Monday about my Vietnam trip and about some of the outstanding questions I have. And there were a good number of people who jumped in and gave me some very good referrals. So there's a guy named David Billstrom who read my piece, and he actually works with American companies that are trying to reshore their product. And he had a bunch of good tips and advice for me, but he also connected me to a potential metal fabricators in the U.S., both of which, though, would not work. One for price reasons, like we know already, and the second one is too small. So this sort of, putting out my challenge to LinkedIn, it's a little bit of a vulnerable place to share what's going on with me, especially when you're talking about stuff with pricing. I don't want necessarily everyone to understand that I'm thinking about a price raise. But by putting it out there, I connected with another small business owner who, just like me, is going to have his tariff go from like 7.5% to 25%. And then he, a couple of days later after that, posted his own introspective piece about what he was going through with the China tariffs. So you never know if you put something out there who's going to come to help. And I know there were a lot of people just wanting to give me moral support, as I look particularly to figure out if there's a fit again in the US. I mean, everybody wants that to work. I want that to work. Like, who doesn't want it to work? But people don't understand that this process for a small business owner is so far bigger than you could possibly imagine. There's so many moving pieces. I mean, even if I were to move it to Vietnam, what if then they put on a tariff on Vietnam and they consider what companies like I'm doing is dumping, or do the same thing on Mexico? It's just, there's a lot of unanswered questions. And even the, U.S. Trade Commission, the office that sets all of the tariff rates, they have a hotline you can call to try to figure out what exactly is going on with your HTS code, which in my case, it's aluminum consumer goods. We have gone back and forth for almost 2 weeks now by phone, by email, by second in command type people, and we still don't have clarity. Is my tariff going to 28%? And is it happening on August 1st? Like, yes or no? Just please answer the question. Because for me, if my containers come back after August 1st, I actually have an incremental $68,000 tariff bill with my daughter starting college the next month. So for me, please, government agency, I'm a small business, tell me what it's going to be, because I'm going to have a shortfall of $68,000 in what I'm planning for this year because you've only given me 70 days advance notice.
I want to run a situation by you guys. It's from a question that I saw on the small business subreddit. Let me read it quickly. It's from a business owner who wrote, I own a handbag company and one of my employees, small team, only 7 office staff, has just started a shoe company. He has been with us for 3 years and will soon be promoted to creative director, so handles all things creative with 2 reports working under him. He has become a very good friend of me and my family. His brand launched last week, the shoe company, and it is eerily similar to ours. The creative, photos, copyright, etc., and social strategy is nearly identical. He doesn't pose any competition as our products are not competitive, but I believe that it is taking things too far. I've had multiple friends and family members approach me and comment on how the brands can barely be told apart, aside from the product itself. The overall marketing strategy is basically the same. He still shows up for work, puts effort in, but I can't help but think that he is also strategizing for his own brand when doing our work. I'm in a tough spot because he is a loyal, great team member and has already worked very hard for us, but I think this is too far. I feel like if I comment or make a meeting around this, it will be seen as a lack of support on my end. I want to support, but I feel ripped off. Please help if you have any advice. The responses tended to go in 2 directions on Reddit. One was, quick, get a lawyer. The other was, why is this a problem? I'm curious what you guys think.
I think Jackie should take this one.
I'll jump in.
Yeah, Jackie would be best.
So I see it from both sides. I appreciate the need of someone in a creative space and who has that creative juices flowing through them to constantly be creating. That is a part of what makes them really good at their jobs, and that is necessary. And also, I would imagine that if this creative director is working a full-time job for the handbag company, for them to also have the resources, mental, physical, and time to have this full-time gig as the launcher of this all-new secondary company, you can imagine that they're using some company time to do their personal work. That's just how it feels right now. Twice in that passage, they said, the original poster said, I don't feel like this is working. I think this is a problem. I don't see how we're going to fix this. And so that tells me they're already leaning towards knowing that there needs to be a break. But the time invested in the relationship has been the thing that's kept them from doing that. I also, and Sean, you may be able to speak to this, I think there are some graphic designer / creative talents who can do a remarkable job of changing the style based on the client. And so the work really looks like the client and the client's target customer. Those people belong at an agency because they're able to move from client to client, from industry to industry, from style to style, and keep their own personal style at bay. And they lean into the style of what they're creating. Some incredibly talented graphic designers cannot. Their style comes through. Their look is their talent. And you want that. You don't want a Picasso to be able to change and look like a Rembrandt and a Monet. You want it to look like Picasso. And so I always advise people when they're shopping for a graphic designer to hire or a graphic designer like inside or a freelancer they're going to do work with, ask them to show you different styles. And then you have to decide if you think they have the ability to adapt to your need, or if you're hiring them for their style. Those are two very different approaches, and you really need to know which one you want before you know that it's a good thing. And so it's entirely possible that this creative director is super uber talented at their style. And so everything they create for both companies is going to look like that designer, not that company.
That's a great insight.
So, Jackie, clearly you see this as a problem. What would you do?
Well, we have a policy here that your outside time is your time. And I want you to use that time however it best refreshes you, so that when we're together again, we get the refreshed version of you. That's why we do a 4-day work week. That's why we have work from home and very liberal paid time off policies. It's because I want people when they're here to be really refreshed and into what they're doing. So graphic designers want to go on the weekends or on their days off and mow grass and have a landscaping company. I'm all for it. How can I help you promote it? Because if you come back and that has revitalized you, let's go get you more landscaping clients. And if it evolves so much that you now want to do landscaping full time, that's great. If the graphic designer's side project is not landscaping or car washing or something else that has nothing to do with happens inside this building, but it is in fact doing graphic design for other people, then we'll have a conversation. And if doing graphic design for other people, those people are your friends and family and very small businesses that could never afford the agency, fantastic. How can I help support you in this endeavor? Let me go find you more of them. I want you to be recharged when you come in. And yet sometimes there's a third category where it is a direct conflict. Either the work is really a different industry. It's all altogether a different thing. They're doing work for someone who is not a potential client of ours or a competitor of one of our clients. But sometimes the work is too similar. And so what they're doing for this client looks and feels like what they're doing for our clients. Then we have a conversation and a decision has to be made.
Yeah, I've faced this issue a number of times and I've changed my attitude a lot over the years. I used to really get wound up about it.
Right.
But I would encourage the author to really do some self-reflection here and to not fear the conversation with this person. That I would pick up the book Crucial Conversations and read it, and then use that framework to have a discussion. Because, a lot of these, feelings and sentiments, maybe the person doesn't know that person is feeling that, and maybe given the opportunity, they would say, oh my gosh, I really do value our relationship. I don't want to jeopardize it. What can we do? And I think Jackie makes a really great point that there are designers who cannot get out of their own style. They just can't do it. So I think I would really encourage the person to not look at it through the lens of this person is copying us, as much as they may just not be able to do something different than what they've already done, which to me says, I don't actually think they're a creative director. And because to that is actually a hallmark of a good creative director, is that they can get out of their own head and into different styles for different clients. And so that's another piece I would consider if they're about to promote this person. Are they actually promoting them into the right position? So it's a complex issue. I think lawyering up is a big mistake. I wouldn't do that in a million years.
Is it possible that there just isn't a problem here? If that employee continues to work hard and well and sells shoes, not handbags?
There might even be an opportunity here, right? I think that's why I'm encouraging the person to have the conversation. What if this person builds a great brand and it's complementary to the handbag brand and they're helping each other out? Who knows? I would just be open to that.
I like that.
Yeah. Why not? There's a ridiculously successful consumer brand in Portland called Salt and Straw Ice Cream. And Kim Malik, who's the co-founder, she came out of the world of Starbucks, genius level marketer. And what she has done, I saw her do it in the beginning. I'm like, that's it right there. So she would go find really bespoke, interesting other brands like Tillamook Cheese, Rogue Creamery, different foods, And then she would do like collaborations with them and make new types of ice cream with these collaborations. And so what that did is it grabbed a new audience that was a fan of the other brand and pulled them into her orbit. And it also brought her fans into their orbit. So it like was an absolute win-win. And she's just done this over and over and over again. So I think I really encourage folks to maybe set aside a little bit like this old guard thinking of like competition, and like, can we build something new that's bigger together? Can we make the pie bigger? That may not be possible here. I don't know, but like just open yourself up to that potential. I've seen it work really well. So that's my take.
Do you still have to call a lawyer before you try to do that?
No, keep the lawyers out of it.
I agree.
The lawyers are going to bill you and create all kinds of paranoia and fear. And it is really rare that that's beneficial in this type of a discussion.
That is a great place to end this conversation. My thanks to Sean Bussey, Liz Piccarazzi, and Jackie Russo, and to our sponsor, The Great Game of Business, which helps businesses use an open book management system to build healthier companies. You can learn more at greatgame.com. Thanks, everybody. Wait, don't leave yet. If you have a question or a comment that you'd like the 21 Hats owners to address, send it to me by replying to your morning report or by email at lauren@21hats.com. That's LOREN @21hats.com. Do it now before you forget. And don't be afraid to tell Jay what you really think. He can take it. And if you got something out of this conversation, help us reach more business owners. Tell a friend. Subscribe and review us wherever you get your podcasts. Follow us on Twitter. Subscribe to the Morning Report at 21hats.com. This episode was produced by Jess Thuberon, founder of Blank Word Productions. Okay, now you can leave. Thanks for listening, everyone.